Today's episode is brought to you in part by PhilpMarchingFX.com. With 20 years' experience designing for your indoor and outdoor marching arts teams, their passion is to help creatively showcase your performers while making performances memorable for your audiences. For drill, staging, prop fabrication, and so much more, check out PhilpMarchingFX.com. That's PHILP marching, the letters FX.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Flags in a Gym, a podcast dedicated to all things color guard. My name is Eric. I'm your host and resident color guard nerd. And for today's episode, I sat down with Bill Ives and Matthew Harris from the Marching Pageantry Arts Museum to discuss their project to catalog and preserve as much of the marching arts as possible. We talked about many things, including 1930s drum corps, acquiring donations from the Blue Coats in juxtaposition, preserving history, and more. So sit back, relax, and let's talk some color guard. Hi, guys. How are you?
Having the time of my life.
Doing fantastic.
Fantastic. One of my old bosses used to say that every day. Like, hey, guys, how you doing? And you ask him back, he goes, you know what? I am fantastic. And would drag it out like that every day. So we are sitting down with two people from the, I'm going to say this wrong. So the Marching Pageantry Arts Museum, correct?
Correct.
Look at that.
Said it right.
Yeah, I was like, I know I always want to say performing instead of pageantry.
A little long, but you can do it at the harder time.
Yeah, right. So we're here with Bill Ives and Matt Harris. And before we get started, guys, why don't you go ahead and take a second to introduce yourself to everybody? Matt, I'll start with you.
So my name is Matthew Harris, and I'm the Assistant Acquisitions Manager at the Marching Pageantry Arts Museum, focusing on kind of everything, but specializing in really trying to push WGI stuff, but I collect DCI stuff as well. So it's a ton of fun.
And what about your history in the activity?
I have a kind of an unusual history of the activity. So I marched trumpet and mellophone in high school at Northwest Guilford High School. And then I marched trumpet at WCU, Western Carolina University, in the Pride of the Mountains Marching Band. You might have heard of them, like a 500-person band. But for a while, I never really did anything in the marching arts after that. And then I kind of got back into the marching arts from organizing a reunion for my high school band. And then that led to me joining Assembly Line Senior Winter Guard. And I realized I was totally missing out. Color guard is like my bread and butter. My mom did it, my sister did it, and it's like fate has it. Now I wound up doing it. So I absolutely adore it. And that eventually led me to meet this fine gentleman, Mr. Bill Ives, as I started to archive and preserve media and now preserving artifacts as well for the museum. That's how I got to where I am. Kind of a crazy, crazy screwball way to start. Starting to spin at age 26 is unusual, I would say, in this activity.
It is, but you know what? That's why Senior Guard is there. And I love Senior Guard and I support it fully. So an assembly line's been cranking for years.
Oh, yeah.
In North Carolina. So, Bill, how about you?
Well, I started as a little kid in a fife and drum corps in Philadelphia, 6 years old. I've been marching all my life. This is a way of life for me, this whole activity. 14 years in a fife and drum corps. I learned how to play the drums, fife, played bass drum primarily, but I also knew all the fife music. And we also had an indoor color guard. So I've been doing color guard since the days when you had two snare drummers and a bass drummer play cadence for the color guard. So I'm talking 1968. This is pre-music recorded. And then once we started using reel-to-reel tape decks, I went to the American flag section. Then I went to saber and rifle. And I've been doing guard all my life. I still have a rifle in my car right now in case a spinning contest breaks out at any given moment. And I still can do 100 right spins at the moment. Now, I just turned 68. So I'm probably the oldest living person that can do 100 spin on the right arm. I hope nobody challenges me. But anyway, so color guard is my life. I taught 3 high school bands, Norristown High School, Gloucester City, New Jersey High School, and Pencrest High School near me in Media, PA, where my daughter marched. And then I ended up teaching the guard. And I was there for 9 years. I started the indoor guard, the indoor drum line, and ran an indoor show for 9 years. Like I said, color guard is life. I really believe in that.
I love that. And I love that you still have a rifle in your car. That's amazing.
It's right there, 2.2 pounds for my 2010 high school guard. 5,000 drops, has not broken because of the way it's taped. It is taped beautifully and will not break.
Take care of your equipment and it'll last. I still have mine from 2006 when
Okay.
I marched Apex. I kind of ended up with it after my last
Well, I
season.
probably
So.
saw you in competition then because I remember Apex and BPEX and
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I used to go up to I used to teach with a TOB band, and we would go up to the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Championships. That's like the second weekend of November, and it's
Yep, yep.
12 degrees outside, and
Oh yeah, yeah. Nothing like that.
nothing like that. Let me tell you, ooh, those are some cold days. But before we get into the history of and structure of the museum, I want to talk about what your specific roles are because we have a lot to talk about, and it's a really cool whole thing. But what are your specific roles and responsibilities, Matt?
So I kind of, Bill probably agree with this. I do a bit of, mostly I focus on acquiring flags, uniforms, and significant artifacts like programs and maybe show DVDs and stuff like that for archival purposes for the museum. But I also have to also catalog all these items. So every item, I have to put donor information, all of that, and also what shows it was in, who made it, if I could find the designer. Like for example, the Bluecoats have been very generous to us, and I just got some their uniforms from the Observer Effect in the mail the other day, and I coordinated with Greg Legola. I think that's how you say it.
Legola, I believe it's
Legola, Greg
Legola.
Legola. Okay. So Greg Legola, and I was like, hey, just want to confirm you designed these, right? And I sent him photos and was able to say, okay, I can confirm you designed these, and if there's a performer name, identify that. It's a long process, but I have a giant spreadsheet. Bill can attest to this. And so that's my main focus is acquisitions. But I also kind of do a little bit of everything. Like I helped make our business cards recently, our new business cards, and try to mobilize people, get people interested, and just get the conversation going and spreading awareness for a museum. That's one of the most important things is just awareness of the project. I mean, in the region that Bill lives in, it's kind of known, like New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. But down here in the Southeast, where I'm from, not many people had heard of it unless they had an active involvement with DCI and they had seen Bill's display at the 50th, or they travel a lot. A lot of the local groups and people just weren't familiar with it. So one of the big things I try to do is just spread information and awareness as well. I came on, Bill said, "You're going to do WG artifacts." I had a phone call with him because I was trying to figure out what some guard was on a tape I found. And I was like, well, this guy Bill Ives, he's got a whole collection. Maybe he'll know. And he was like, let's have a call. I showed him this record that I found. That was what we found was the oldest drum and bugle corps record that Bill had ever found. It's from between 1910 and 1918, somewhere in there. I had found it in an antique store like 6 years ago. And that sort of cemented our relationship and the craziness just began. And I wound up collecting, at this point, it's 63 uniforms across college bands, DCI, and Winter Guard, and 82 flags since February 1st. So that, and that's not including all the additional like little like stuff like hats or programs or things. So I just get Bill stuff and I identify it. And because Bill's like, I'm like, no, I'll just write it all out.
Excellent. And Bill, what's your role?
So I'm the founder and the CEO. I'm the crazy guy that started in 1990 with 8 uniforms, and I now have 800 uniforms. I don't have a problem. I don't need an intervention. I just need money because what has happened is I was doing the history of my corps called the Archer-Epler Musketeers from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. And after I aged out of indoor junior guard, I was with the Blue Max from Gloucester City. And one of my instructors was at Norristown High School in Pennsylvania. So myself and another friend went up there to work with the band and the guard. And then he says, all right, you guys are in charge. We're 23 years old. And he left us. And so now we're running the indoor guard. We're doing the outdoor band. And so a couple of girls we were teaching went down to this new group that we heard about called the Musketeers. And it was a senior corps. I went down with them and I ended up joining. I was the only guy in an all-girl guard in 1981. We did DCA for 4 years. flag the first year and 3 years at rifle. And it was the time of my life. I had new friends, and I've made friends for life. Now that I'm 68, a lot of my friends are gone, but I now live for their memories because, it's just that the best thing that ever happened was joining this drum corps. And I've been there 45 years continuously. I have not stopped playing bass drum when we do concerts. We still do concerts. So I do what I can. But the history started in 1990 with this reunion that we had, 4-day reunion. And at the end, there was 8 uniforms in a closet. And so I took possession of the 8 uniforms. After 3 years of calling alumni from the 30s and 40s and the 50s, interviewing them at the VFW and asking them what was it like in 1932, 1938, 1956? What was it like? And I would sit there and record stories. And so I even mailed out 300 questionnaires, and I got 88 back that had stories. That's my nucleus for my book. So everything you want to know about my corps is in 2 binders, Archie Book 1, Archie Book 2. Every instructor, director, every song we ever played, the rosters. I have a program book going back to 1935 that has the first roster. And so that is what really got me going. Now I have 250,000 items.
Wow.
All because of my corps history, which started in 1932. That was my primary circle. Then other people gave me uniforms from Maumee, Ohio, from the Maumee Demons, St. Mary's Lancers from Baltimore, Erie Thunderbirds. And so people started giving me uniforms because they saw my passion. And in 2001, I had 29 uniforms. And I thought, wow, I got a nice little collection. 29, that's a lot. I used to keep them over in the washer dryer area. And my wife said, you can't keep that here. So I took them all down to the VFW. And I filled up the 1 coat rack. Then I filled the second side. Then I got a Z rack. Then I got a second. And now I got 27 Z racks of uniforms and corps jackets from around the country, Canada. And so what started as just a small collection of my corps has now gone to international. I got uniforms from England, Netherlands, Canada, and I will have Mexico. And there's no museum in the country that does what I'm going to do. Nobody does us. And that's why I chose the name Marching Pageantry Arts Museum.
Excellent. You gave us a nice, clear rundown there. So what's the mission of the Marching Pageantry Arts Museum?
It is to be an educational museum. So if somebody wants to look up something about an old corps, you want to find a song, you want to know something about anything about our history, I will be that database. You'll be able to find things. And I've had people come in from Chicago and other areas to do PhD thesis work. I've had people call me and ask me about drum corps history that did a documentary. I've had other people to do all kinds of reports, and they call me and ask me, what was it like and how did it happen? And I can tell you with facts. I want to be accurate with 3 sources saying this is true. Because a lot of people say, oh yeah, there was a lot of drum corps. That's not a fact. That's a broad brush. I know on my master list there's 16,000 drum corps. So
wow.
As I document all these corps, and I've taken every major list there has been over the last 10 years and kind of sorted, adjusted it, and I now know there was 880 all-girl corps. I can tell you by state, country, and any number of abstracts. So when you ask me a question, how many in this state, I'll tell you how many were in that state. You want to look up a name? I probably have it on my list. And I've done that over the last 10 years with some other people that have been doing great research with me.
Excellent. So you decided to focus with the Archer-Epler Musketeers. That was your original marching corps. It's crazy. You started with 8 uniforms, and now you're up to, you said, over 800?
Yes.
That's insane.
And they're still coming in. And I just got a St. Andrew's Bridgeman uniform. Now, if you know what the difference is between Bridgeman and St. Andrew's Bridgeman, the Bridgeman that people know with the long yellow coats is the second version. St. Andrew's was sponsored by the church and had the cadet style with the shako and all that. And I just got that in the mail the other day, and it's the 1979 St. Andrews. This is where I say, Matt, you got to be patient. If you don't wait for a couple of weeks. I've waited 10 years for certain uniforms, and I just don't stop. But the reason why I have what I have is because I keep asking, and people understand my mission, and so they now know that this is the best place to send things. Since DCI week, 2 weeks ago, I've had like 20 calls, and it's overwhelming. Where it used to be 1 or 2 a month, people are asking so many questions. Or, can you find a PBS broadcast from 1979 to 1982? I went, probably, because I got 1,000 videotapes. but I had to go into a pile of 3,000 videotapes and sort them, and I haven't done that yet. So we can honor some requests. Other things are in order, and other things will take a while as I get more help, like interns, people to come in and sit there and do what you do in a museum, catalog, set up the numbers, and then, so we are following museum procedures. We have an ID number for every core on that 16,000 names. They have an ID, so whatever that name is and that item comes in, we go to their spreadsheet, assign the number to it, and then everything that comes in will match up. And you can see on the spreadsheet everything that belongs to Avon High School. It's a lot, but the reason why we do this is like the Smithsonian and the Library of Congress. They're a resource. We're going to do the same thing. And Matt has come along at the right time because Matt is really good at doing technology where everything I got took me years because I had to do it eyeball to eyeball. In 5 months, he got 50 uniforms by just doing emails and phone calls. And Matt's relentless like me. You know, he's a young kid, 27. He's the right age with the technology that's coming in.
Excellent. So you started the museum project in 1990 and you called it the Bill Ives Drum Corps Memorabilia Collection.
Initially, that's what I was just trying to get my name known that I am collected as who's Bill Ives, I'm Bill Ives. Do you have a uniform? Can I have it? And that still hasn't really changed. When I meet people, did you march? Do you still have your uniform? Can I have it? And now it's easier because now more people have seen me. I've done 100 exhibitions in 8 states, including Canada. I've been around and all over DCI. I had a lot of stuff on display, including old horns kids never seen before. They don't know what a valve rotor horn is, know what a backward facing horn is. They don't know a lot of this because they just haven't been taught. And once they started playing it, like they were having a great time playing these old horns and seeing the uniforms and understanding what they meant. And then having the new uniforms like the blue coat uniforms and the WGI uniforms, and people recognize some of the uniforms that Matt acquired. And that's why history is just a long line. And so in 50 years, Matt may be running the museum. I'll be in the corner stuffed or something like that. We haven't figured out that plan yet, but I'm going to be around for a while. Maybe not moving quickly, but I'll be there. But my real goal is to make it researchable and educational, to teach kids about how the horn developed from straight horn to 3-valve, how the rifles went from a 16-pound Springfield rifle to the rifles we use today, and 10-foot flagpoles to what we use today.
Yeah, we should just get you taxidermied and put you in your old original Corps uniform, just stand you in the corner.
That's a thought. Or we're going to do the R2-D2 with Princess Leia, and I'll be in the unit and just be a hologram projector.
There you go.
So motion sensor, you come near me and I start telling jokes.
In 2002, you changed the name to the Drum Corps Memorabilia Collection. What sparked you to change the name?
Well, people said I shouldn't use my name, so I made a Drum Corps Memorabilia. And people were patting me on the back all the time saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Nobody gave me any money. And so I was paying out of pocket. Don't ask me how much I spent. I spent a lot of money just trying to buy whatever I need, file boxes, plastic tote boxes. And the space that I was using in the VFW wasn't that bad, but now I've overtaken the whole building. I got 3 floors. It's neat and orderly, and if you want to pull out the 1984 Drum Corps World article from August, I can pull that off for you. 5,000 records. You want to hear 1964? I got a record player right here. Put it on, brings tears back. That was your grandfather, your mom, whatever. We can do things. Whether you're old or young, they're learning about the past. And as I watch Boston future, where we're going to record that, so in the next 20 years, when we look back on 2025, and those kids are in their 40s, doing podcasts or whatever we do in 25 years, their stories will matter too about what this show was about and how after 85 years Boston finally won.
It's crazy to think it took them 85 years. I did, one of the founding course, and I'm like, going into the season, I'm like, wait, they've never won? Like, and I had to go back and look, like, wow, they've never won. That's crazy. In 2019, we changed the name again, or say you changed the name again. I wasn't there. And it became what we call it today, Marching Pageantry Arts Museum. And your website mentions that a friend told you about the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix.
Yes.
What was it about the museum that inspired you to change the name again?
It was the first museum dedicated to musical instruments worldwide of all kinds. And the person that started, he would buy instruments. And so I think he had around 12,000 instruments at some point. Then he decided to make a museum. Now it's a top 10 museum in the country. You want to go there? I'm going to go visit it soon. A friend of mine said, Billy, I'm here in Phoenix. You got to look at this place. So I looked at the website, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I stopped looking at the website, went to my Christmas decorations, and I took 5 drum ornaments, and I lined them up in a pattern and took a picture, and I said, I'm going to build that. And that was the beginning of saying, okay, I can't be drum corps. And I went through a bunch of names until I selected Marching Pageantry Arts Museum to talk about just horns and drums and pageantry and focus on a bigger umbrella. So I can do HBCU, I can do college bands, military bands, mariachis. I can do band, but not all band. I'm not a band museum. I will have band items, drums, color guard, but it gave me a bigger umbrella. So since 2019, money has started to come in. Over the last 5 years, maybe $50,000. It's coming in to help support me what I'm doing. Preservation boxes, the things that I need to make sure everything's protected properly, garment bags, file boxes, all the things I need to know as a museum, how to preserve what I'm collecting for the future until it's all scanned.
How wide would you say your outreach was by the time you hit the change to MPAM?
More people around the country are spending money or have offered money, but more people are giving me 500, 1,000, 2,000, which is helpful. I mean, $50 it helps, $100 helps, but I need $100,000 to move. And so as I ask people for more money, I'm kind of like that politician every week. Who do I know? Who can I ask? And can you help? If you want to support a drum corps museum, I'm the only one in the country or worldwide. And so the mission has changed 4 times, as I mentioned earlier, from my corps to where we are today. I had to adapt to the technology, to the mission, and bring more young people in, like Matt and a couple of the other people I have. They're doing fantastic work, and all around the 25, 27 age limit, where a lot of my friends are 50, 60, 70, a little bit on the older side, but that's only because we've been around a while, and I got to get the stories out of those people, because one of my good friends died when he was 99. I interviewed him 5 years ago, and when he was 94, and did a 2-hour interview with him. And I had this picture from 1938 World's Fair where he pointed out all the names, talked about the stories, and I got that recorded. And he lived to 99. 1938 he marched. So as we get all these stories recorded, the same as you do your podcast, you're recording our history, talking about MPAM. I need to know, what was it like in 1974 when you did your first TCI show? Or 2025, Boston, tell me that feeling when you got that trophy this year. That's the story. So that 25, 50 years from now, they're going to remember that now. And so hopefully they'll win again. It's a very stiff competition. When you watch DCI, it's really the best of the best of the best. And how do you separate? And this is why I never wanted to be a judge. I don't want to be a judge. I rather sell Subies, help in the food truck. I would rather help organizations that way, like Jersey Surf. I spent 15 years doing that, driving all night, selling all day. I had the time of my life.
So in 2021, you officially became a nonprofit organization. So now for anybody who's interested in making a donation, it is tax deductible because you are a nonprofit. Was this the final thing that really catapulted the museum, like once you got that nonprofit status?
Yes, because now, I mean, people were giving me money from time to time, but now when people give me, say, $5,000, well, now they can put that on their taxes. It does make a difference. People that have money will do it. So that really did change everything to the point that I'm legitimate, and people realize I'm not just some guy collecting things. I mean, I was for a while, but I was the only guy that cared. Now I'm strategic partner with DCI. We're working on WGI. People know what I do. It only took 35 years for people to know what I do. And that's fine, because start out conversation, and then you might get, a show and people see you and they say, oh, you're the guy. Well, now they know my name. And then at Indy, Dan Potter, he gave me his cape from Geneseo Nights, 1979, when he was drum major. And Dan Potter, he's like, wow, you were a drum major? Yeah, he was 19 years old at one point. He said, we're going to do an interview with you. I said, okay, I thought they were going to do it at my exhibit. And he said, no, we're going down to the field. Well, when you go down to the field in Lucas Oil Stadium, it's a trip. And you get down to the field and you stand there and you look up and you say, oh my God, it's 30 stories high. And then I'm sitting there with his cape in this picture, and he says to me, all right, we got 90 seconds. And I went, 90 seconds? I can talk for 4 hours. What do you mean 90 seconds? In between this corps and this corps, the Colts came off. And so when he got his mic, he said, "All right, come on out." I'm standing out there on the field looking up, and he says, "Back in the day, hard to believe, but I marched, and here's my cape." And he talked about this beautiful cape, and he had a picture. And then he says, "I want to introduce you to Bill Ives. He's the founder and CEO of Marching Pageantry Arts Museum." And I'm like, trying not to look at the crowd. I can talk for hours, but I don't like looking at 20,000 people and trying to see their eyeballs. So then everything worked. And then he said, "Would you like my cape?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And I took the cape. And then he said, "So how many items do you have in the collection?" And I said, "Well, I got 800 uniforms, 5,000 records." And I just rattled off numbers. And he said, "Well, how many items?" I said, "About 250,000. And then he says, "A 250,000 items?" And I went, "Oh my God, that sounds so much bigger when you say 250,000. That's when it really hit me at DCI what I have done. I know I have a lot of stuff. 250,000. And that's approximate because when I count all the photos, all the buttons, all the patches, everything that I have, it might be 350,000.
Wow.
So and more is coming in. DCI is sending me all their stuff that they collected. They're sending it as a bill. They say, "Give it a bill." And more people are saying, "You want my buttons? You want my uniforms? You want this?" And they're sending it to bill. That's a happy problem. I'm going to solve the problem of finding space, finding help, finding money. That's my mission. I am going places, and as I meet more people, and Matt, I mean, he went, I thank Matt for making this happen tonight. I'm so happy to meet you today. And just to give you a better rundown of what I do, and just for the record, I have 25 different types of rifles that you would love to see. And I'm going to bring them to DCI next year so I can show the history of the rifle from the Springfield 16-pound rifle all through the different variations. The DCI say, "Now, let me see you throw a triple of this." History of color guard is important. 1983 Cavaliers is what I call pure guard. No floor, no props, rifles and flags. Then it's transition, and now we have these props, which it's a different style. I love that too. Matt showed me
Woodlands, yeah, Woodlands High School.
Oh, yes.
I haven't watched a lot of WGI in the last 20 years. I know about it, read about it, done some regional shows, and AMP is an amazing group because I saw AMP when they first started with just a bunch of little kids from Camden, and I watched them grow up to be top-notch, world-class performers. And I know the director, and I think love him too, Drew Tolliver, and Matt Hurley, and everybody that helped there. They took a bunch of kids and made it into a world-class guard over 20 years. Dedication, wanting to help people and kids. And so within my collection, their uniforms will be there, but all the equipment that when I marched, transition, here's where we are today. And that's the mission of MPAM, to document how it happened, who did it, and where.
Well, another thing, just to tack on to what you said, Bill, is that every single piece of marching arts memorabilia is important. I mean, people will think uniforms and flags are the only things, and while those are like huge things, like super huge when we got the blue coats stuff, like when they sent me a bunch of uniforms, that's fantastic, and it's exceedingly important to preserve. But everything is an invaluable brick in the wall of our activities history.
Good way to put it.
It's like having a jigsaw puzzle. When you have a certain amount of pieces, you can sort of see what the picture is, but the more pieces you get, the more clear the picture of our history is. So everything from a button to a t-shirt to even like pins and stuff they were giving out at the WGI Expo tent, like I took home as much as I could for the museum because all of that is a story. It is a story, and it is a snapshot of where we are in our history.
So I had a woman go up to my exhibit in Indy, and she had 2 paintings and a 1966 Chicago Cavalier newsletter. 3 kids from the Cavaliers with their Cavalier jackets come. I said, "Hey guys, come here, come here." And they came over and they went, "Oh my God, now they're touching history," because they just had history night and they learned about some of the stuff. So as Matt just mentioned, everything I get matters because it's part of a story. Now, when I first started, I had uniforms, shakos, jackets, overseas caps, history books, and one more category in 1990. I now have 82 categories of items. So all these categories have a particular name that a museum person will use to describe your tablet, your stand for your phone, your coffee mug, the heater, everything has a name. And as I learned proper museum words, with Bruno Succola passing away this past week, he donated a lot of flags 7, 8 years ago. Some of them were George Songali flags, James Bond Cabby flags. I mean, they're in the collection, so his name will live on in the museum because he took the time to make sure I got those flags. Yeah, I mean, all these great names. When you want to have a piece of that person, like Chuck Mangione. But I asked my friend Tom, I said, can you print out a list of every corps that played a Mangione number? And I had that list, and there was 400 corps that played his music. And then I found a guy that said the first song for Chuck Mangione to be played on the field was "The Hill Has Eyes," I think is the title. And that introduced the Blue Devils to Chuck Mangione, and that's how we got Land of Make Believe, because they heard Magnificent Yankees play that number. Yeah, so drum corps, I can't say enough about it. I don't do sports, never good at anything, but history, I'm really good at history, and my legacy. There's a lot of people in the background, the admin type of people, that I want to talk about too as we do these things, because without the admin people serving food for these kids, the food truck people, there's a lot of stories that I now know about. Do you know who had the first food truck? Suncoast Sound in Miami. They had to drive 7 hours north just to get out of the state before they went anywhere in the country. So we had to figure out how to feed kids, how to sleep kids, and all that's changed over the last 30 years. But that food truck from Suncoast Sound went to Carolina Crown, and then they painted it brown, and that food truck went to Jersey Surf, and we painted it blue. And that food truck is still in service. So we're talking 50 years. That food truck has been serving food to drum corps people. But before we got that food truck, we used to have refrigerators strapped in the box truck, and then sternal pots, aluminum foil pans. And so today it's different, though. The kids get good food.
Well, and another thing too, I think to tack onto this, and this is a part of, I think, Winter Guard history that not a lot of groups or kids that are familiar with nowadays. So I know when my mom Winter Guard in the 90s, she slept on gym floors just like drum corps did. And I don't know if that was a common practice amongst all Winter Guards, but it's certainly kind of unheard of today. I mean, just to be able to get permission to saying, okay, these adults are going to sleep in a random high school gymnasium for no explicable reason because they're not on tour. But that was just, I guess, it was our customary practice. We don't do that anymore. Yeah, everything from food trucks down to a pin is part of one story, monumental story. It's like that big contract in Willy Wonka, where he has the big contract that he has all the kids and parents sign, but the UK can't read it towards the bottom. It's like, well, we're going to figure out what it says at the bottom because Bill is relentless and he will figure out, he will take a microscope or a magnifying glass and we will find all the words to this story to tell our activities history. And it is a marvelous and wonderful history.
Yeah, it is. And I want to talk a little bit about the donation process. So, Matt, how does the donation process work? Like, you want to acquire something or I want to donate something. How does that work?
So there are basically two main ways that I acquire something. In the case of, well, actually, we'll say there are three different ways. So the first way is there's something from a show that I really want. Maybe it's a show that's been gone for a couple of years. For example, I will say Juxtaposition 2015, The Hand You Are Dealt, the show they did with a deck of cards. One of my all-time favorites. I was like, I want something from this to reserve at the museum. I don't know anybody that has it. I don't know if they still exist at the program, but that's something I think should be preserved. So in that case like that, I would go and talk to that program and somebody like Stephanie Furness, who runs Juxtaposition, be like, hey, do you know anybody that has this? And she might get me in touch with somebody that she knows that might have the specific uniform, and then we correlate it off of that. That's the first way I might get a specific item. Mostly it's through Facebook Messenger like that. Second way is for stuff that's current. So when I went to Dayton this past season, which first time at Dayton, wow, like just amazed, mind blown. I saw, for example, like Wiley High School, the Cruella de Vil show. Absolutely loved it. Audience went crazy for it. I knew in that second, when the audience reaction, this is a show people are going to talk about. I loved it. It was a fan favorite. this is something that will be looked back on and people will want to see. So immediately, while we were still in Dayton that Saturday, I found out who their instructor was, and I messaged him through Facebook, and I was like, hey, do you have this? Is this like super fresh? Would you like to meet up somewhere in Dayton? Or can you mail it? And in that case, he said, I have one back home in Wiley, Texas. I'll mail it to you after the season. So that's sort of the immediate response thing. The third way is the most exciting, and you never know what's going to happen. It is what Bill calls the chaos theory. You come into a situation without any planning, without any foresight, and you could walk away with something you didn't know existed. So, for example, A-class finals, I was sitting with a good friend of mine, and this gentleman said, hey, can we sit next to you? I was like, okay, awesome. Very nice guy. And I was like, well, who do you perform? And he said, FIU World. I was like, oh, awesome. I did get to see your show. What was it about? He said, oh, it was Hannibal Lecter show. I was like, oh, that's Hannibal Lecter. Like, oh, is that? And I saw the costume on display in the expo tent with like the skin suit with all the patches and the eyelets for sewing. I was like, by chance. I was like, we need this for the music. I was like, wouldn't happen to have one that you would be willing to donate? He's like, actually, I have a spare one because there was a manufacturing error and they made a whole nother set of uniforms, and I have it with me, washed, ready to go. I can give it to you tomorrow. And I was like, absolutely. Had no clue there was a Hannibal Lecter show that season until Dayton, and until that very moment, in fact, because I didn't see it in prelims or semis. And I came home with it. And that happened with McCormick's. McCormick's gave us a Japanese drum corps color guard uniform when I went and I talked to them. It was from Toyota Illusion Magic from Toyota Japan. It's the city that they make Toyotas in. Yeah, it's like I was like, I didn't even think that might be the name of a city. It's like, is there a Honda Japan? Maybe there is. But the lady at McCormick's was super nice, and she's like, we're gonna donate this. Here's a bag with catalogs, and then she gave me a uniform. It was our first like Japanese uniform. Wild, absolutely crazy, and beautiful uniform. I had no idea it existed. I had no idea that they would have had samples there. But that's the chaos theory. You never know what's going to happen, and you just prepare to like react in the moment. And that's sort of more of an in-person kind of response. Doesn't happen super often, but it has happened a couple times to me, and that's always super exciting. So those are the sort of the three main ways I collect uniforms and other artifacts.
I love that. And there is a Honda City, Japan, because that's where Aimachi was from.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
awesome.
they call it Honda City, so it's not just Honda, but just so you know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
But
That's so
I
cool.
also think I believe it's HANDA with the like the English spelling, so it's not like Honda like the car, but close enough.
Yeah, yeah.
So there is an actual physical museum that people can come and see the materials, or is it more just kind of a storage facility at this point?
No. This is a VFW. It's the Archer-Epler VFW Post 979 in Upper Darby, PA. The address is 6736 Marshall Road, Upper Darby, PA 19082. And that's where my drum corps is. That's where I've been going for 45 years. Mondays, Fridays, Saturdays. My wedding reception was in the back room. I mean, the back room has 27 racks. You go up to the second floor, you see all the records and the programs and the newspapers. You go up to the third floor, and I got 500 corps jackets. And so I have encroached on the whole building to store this stuff because somebody has to. I mean, I got a pink elephant from Jim Mason from Star of Indiana. It's massive. I got the Santa Clara chair from Phantom of the Opera show in 1987.
It's 89. Like,
Appreciate it. Appreciate that. I'll say 89.
Didn't they do it twice though? They did it back to back. Was it
88 and
88?
89. Yeah.
That's right.
80, okay, 89. But all this stuff takes up room. And Jim Mason, when I went to see him in Bloomington a couple years ago, gave me two big boxes the size of my drawing table, blast costumes. And I have all their stage Bibles, how the lighting, how the position, the drill in 3-inch binders. That's what they call the Bible. It's amazing when you look at what they had to do to make a production for London or anywhere else in the world where Blast performed. And right now, Blast is in Japan and Korea. So I was lucky enough to meet Jim Mason. He gave me all this stuff. And so it's my job to preserve that. And it's just taking up space. And I got 3,000 square feet, and I need 10. Because as I grow, I mean, and it's only a workshop space that I need because the bigger museum is more than $10 million. Let's just say that. I don't want to say the real number because it's scary, and okay, I'm going to ask for that kind of money. But we started here, and now we're here.
And you are looking to raise funds to help you find that new space. How can someone help out if they wanted to? What's the best way to make a donation to the museum?
Two ways. Our website, Marching Pageantry Arts Museum, or MPAM, there's a QR code. So you can do it that way, or you can do it the old-fashioned way and send me a check. So you would write it to MPAM, MPAM, P.O. Box 2073, Media, MEDIA, Pennsylvania, 19082. You can mail a check just as easily, or you can try the Venmo.
Excellent. Matt, I did a kind of a question about when you're requesting donations. Do you find people are hesitant or very willing to donate, or is it kind of a mix of both?
So it's very interesting. When it comes to donations, you can run the gamut. You never know quite how willing someone might be to part with stuff. If it's an organization, for example, like Juxtaposition, who I mentioned earlier, they went through a whole process and collected stuff. They were like, what shows would you like some stuff from? We'll put stuff together. Okay. They went and they talked to alumni that they were still in contact with and put together a box over a couple months of stuff, and they mailed it all to me. And they were extremely excited, and they went through a really thorough process. Organizations are usually a little bit more flexible, but when it comes to specific items owned by individuals, if it's like their uniform they wore, particularly I've noticed with drum corps, more so than WGI, people have stronger attachments, and people that have marched within the last 10, 15 years have stronger attachments to their uniforms than people that say marched 40, 50 years ago.
I feel very targeted right now based on conversations we've had. I feel very targeted right now.
We know where he lives.
Oh no, I am. But no, people that marched within, I would say, probably the 2010s, particularly drum corps, 2010s, 2020s, that it's immediately or vaguely immediately in their history. Those people, for the most part, are still very freshly connected to their activity. They're still relatively still young, and a lot
they
of them
still fit in it.
Yeah. Oh well, I wish I still fit in my high school uniform, but no, that was a twig. But they have kind of it's a little bit more difficult for them because they still have a closer sentimental attachment to it. They've not had it as long. Whereas, for example, I've been trying to go after stuff from the Velvet Knights recently, which has been great. They have been fantastic. Their alumni have been like, we're going to go and talk to people. I know this person, this person. I'm like, great, because we need Velvet Knight stuff. Like, we only have a hat and a tie in terms of like uniform stuff, and we didn't have that like 6 months ago, and that was exciting. I was like, Bill, you've got first uniform piece from the Velvet Knights, because people love the Velvet Knights. I mean, I remember learning about them when I was like a kid, and so they've been around a lot longer, and those alumni from the 80s to the 90s, like, they've had that stuff a lot longer. It's kind of just sitting around in a closet. So those people have had the time to sort of like grown accustomed and being like, okay, well, this is an important part of my history, but I think it's important for it to be preserved. It can range all over the roadmap, but people are generally willing to donate for the most part. For example, I talk about Will. Will donated, oh my lord. Will donated this. He sent me this giant box of stuff, Will, from your podcast, flags. I'm like, how did you get all this stuff? He's just like, I've just had it around in the closet and I've not been doing anything with it. I'm just like, well, thank you so much. Like, we got our first Blue Devils flag from Will, the Blue Devils Godfather Part Blue. First flag we've had in our collection. Enormously like thankful for it. So it really varies depending on person, but people are more often willing to donate. That's what I found. It's usually uniforms, more specifically, people have a harder time letting go of than flags or whatnot. But still, for the most part, people are pretty generous. And I'm honestly flabbergasted by just how generous that some people are. I mean, with the Blue Coats, I mean, I just rang them up one day. I was like, hey, I was going to go to Cleveland on a trip. And I was like, Canton's not that far from there. Why don't I go see if the Blue Coats have anything? And it'd be great to have Downside Up or something like that. So I just gave them a call on their helpline. I talked to this wonderful lady named Courtney Welch, who manages a lot of their equipment and costumes and stuff. And I was like, hey, do you know the museum? She's like, no, I had. And so we talked. I said, she's like, I could get to donate some of this stuff. Absolutely. Just email me a list. So I emailed her this list. I was like, I'm asking for way too much on this list. There's no way. And then I get this email back. She says, we're going to send you all of this. And she sent a list of 12 uniforms that she was going to give me. I was like, holy cow. I didn't even ask for it. Like, she was like, we have this, I'll give this to you, this. So more than I asked for. Juxtaposition, they gave us way more than I even would have imagined in my wildest dreams. Like, people are exceptionally willing to donate. And sometimes the surprises, the chaos theory, that's what's the most exciting thing, is you never know. Like with Blue Coats, I didn't think Downside Up was still around. I mean, you never know. You ask, like, but it was like almost 10 years ago. You never know. And then she's like, yep, here it is. And I remember getting that in the mail. And it was the first uniform I showed my mom and was like, and she just like, she went, wow. She was like, I mean, because it's instantly recognizable. Everyone knows that show. And it's a crucial part of our activist history. And so thankful to the Blue Coats for donating that, because that's probably one of my highlights. Just being able to say, hey, mom, look at this show, like that you love, everybody loves. We got this in the museum. We've preserved this for everyone. Kids in 20 years are going to talk about Downside Up. Everyone is going to know that show till the end of time. I mean, the kids now, I mean, Bill, you said that pulled in people down to the museum
Yep.
booth.
People came over. But
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to tag on to what you say, I mean, I've asked people for 10 years for various uniforms, like St. Ignatius. St. Ignatius was the first all-girl corps to three-peat before anybody else. And so 10 years. And then I saw it on Facebook one day, and somebody tried to beat me to the punch. And I told the woman to call me. 30 minutes later, I said, okay, I'll send it to you. My reputation is now working for Matt, that they heard me. So they say, okay, you're working with Bill? Yeah, I know Bill. I've seen his exhibits. Yeah, I like that. So there's a trust that I've built that I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to take care of the story. I'm doing everything by the book. Everything's above board. That's why I have a 501(c). That changed everything. It really is just patience. And I try to tell Matt, it took me years of this way. And then my friend down in Charleston, South Carolina, his name is Bob Cinco. He's my counterpart. He started doing research at the American Legion National Headquarters in Indianapolis in 1988. And it was not very neat or organized. And basically, he kind of took it over. So in his house, 3,000 binders of drum corps information. Every binder is a corps. Name a corps, he pulls the binder. Here's all the things he found. He has a small collection of uniforms, maybe about 30, drums. All that stuff's coming to me, though. We have a memorandum of understanding that if he dies tomorrow, there's $5,000 in the bank for me to come down with a bunch of young guys, load up 100 feet of cabinets, and bring it to my place. Now, for the people that are listening, in case I die tomorrow, it is the job of the board and the rest of my friends that have been helping me for years to keep this thing alive, not to have it thrown out. So we are working diligently just to make sure it's done right. We know who to call, and we have insurance on the building, on the collection, to make sure that when somebody gives me a piece of their heart, that uniform is a piece of their heart. That's why they don't give it away sometimes. Some people said, I'm going to be buried in it. I said, okay, just tell me the day you die and where you're going to be buried, and I'll let you get buried, and then I'll open up the casket. It's not that hard to do. I'd rather do it during the daylight. It's a lot easier. The nighttime is scary. But the whole point is that when somebody gives you something, it meant something to it. And I have to take that seriously when I get things, to make sure I record it properly and what did it mean to you, so that story is somewhat preserved.
I'm just like, I have to say, I am so honored. Thank you so much having us on this podcast too, because you care a lot about the history of this activity. And I mean, you've enriched my knowledge of this activity, of the Winter Guard activity, just based on the scope. I mean, my knowledge was limited to 2010s and 1996 because my mom had that tape. And that was it. And so I've learned so much about the rules and how the activity works because I'm still kind of a baby to all this. in Winter Guard, but also helping us promote our mission on here because it's so important. History, I think we're kind of the underdog when it comes to school subjects. History is not often viewed as important as math or science because, I mean, historians, well, record keeping is important. History, I really don't think it is as equally as important, and if not more important, because your past shows you your future, and so on and so forth. You mean without looking at the past, I mean everything comes back around. I'm waiting for LeMay uniforms to come back around in style. Give it a couple more years. I mean, they were in style in the '90s. I remember
You
when
know why they're not going to come back?
washing. Everything is so important, historically wise, just learning about where we came from. We look at a program like, if I look at Avon High School Jane Bond and I look back at the Cavaliers James Bond Whittaker ship from 1983, it's just absolutely fascinating. And knowing your history, I mean, that I think that made it a richer product. You could have just done it James Bond music as a show, but the fact that they pulled specific musical selections, but also like sort of like the hammer toss from the 83 show, I mean, that's super, super in-depth design work. And so without history, who are we? Like, who are we as people without a record of our past? And everything is important when it comes to preserving history. Everything, everyone's story.
And it's not just the champions; it's all
Exactly.
the groups. That's why when people say, "Why don't you just do the top corps?" There's all these little corps that you grew up in, that you marched. That's how you got to Blue Devils. You didn't come out being a Blue Devil. You got to start somewhere. So I will do all units. That's why 16,000 corps matters, not just a couple corps.
I do have kind of a couple quick questions just about just like artifacts. So this may be a very difficult question to answer, but I just was curious. What would you say is maybe the rarest artifact you've acquired? Or maybe one of, maybe not the rarest, but just something that's like super rare that you were managed to get your hands on.
So I got program books back to 1935.
Wow.
I got the first rule book from 1932. And in the rule book on page 22, it says if you show up to the gate with a valve instrument, you will tape it down. Because a lot of corps were playing straight horns at the time. So you can't have a valve instrument until the rules changed in the 50s, where they allowed the valve. And the valve was horizontal in the beginning because they didn't want people knowing they had a valve on their horn until they went vertical. Then they went to 2 valve, then they went to 3. You had to use 2 military judges, one for M&B and M&M, which is marching and maneuvering and military bearing. And so that was the rules, 1932. And back then in 1936, in Chicago at the National, they had 100 drum corps in the parade. Started at 8 o'clock in the morning and finished at midnight.
Oof.
Big parade. Everybody had a drum corps. So judging became, well, how do you judge? Who's judging? How do you pick out of 100 corps? What are the rules? Until 1932, there was no real set rule. So yeah, that's the rarest, the drum, the rule book. And of course, Matt's record from 1910, that is the oldest recording that we have tangible.
The crazy thing about the record too is that I remember just showing it to Bill on a whim. It was just sitting. I got it for $4. Someone had dropped it and glued it back together. So I've never been able to listen to the full thing. Our guy Tom Norton is going to use a laser turntable to sort of scan all the grooves, and we're going to piece it back together like that. It was ordered to the Sears catalog, and what you can hear, because you can hear a small portion of it, I've been able to listen to, there were fifes with brass. So there were fifes, brass, and drums, which was that particularly common, Bill? You'll
Yes,
have to,
back in the
yeah.
early days, it was fife, drum, and bugle. I have also, Eric, I have a video. It was a film, a Kodak film from 1932, found in a yard sale. It's 3 minutes of drum corps, 1932. And you watch the corps going through the streets. Everything was the same, so many beats per minute, because it was military drum corps. And that's how it started. It wasn't what I call civilian until later, where people wanted to form a corps. Okay, that's what it was. But before, it was all military. So that video, 1932, or I'm sorry, 1931, is a gem. It's like the oldest film in the United States.
Yeah.
Are there any dream artifacts out there that you would like to acquire you haven't been able to get a hold of yet?
I could name one. I'll go first here. I have been hunting doggedly, and perhaps the listeners of the podcast can help. I probably talked to you about this too, Eric. I have been trying to find 1999 Chimeras. No, sorry, 1999 Chimeras. Time to Say Goodbye. A uniform, a flag, something from that show. I've put together a roster of members and people that are associated. And I've gone one by one, trying to get in touch with people that were in that show. And so far, I've not been able to turn up with anything from that show. I show Bill that show. That show is another one that people will talk about for ages. I mean, it's
Agreed.
when I saw that, and I mean, just the way that the words unfold and change into different words. I mean, as far as I know, I don't think that there's anything. I've been trying to find something out there that survived anything. Even someone said I might have a degraded flag that's like falling to pieces because the material's like, I don't care. I'll put it in a box. I'll frame it, like just something that I never used. But so far, nothing. If I could find a uniform or a flag from that show, like I would be over the moon. That is an item I like on my wish list, my number one top thing. So anybody listen to the podcast, you have anything, you have your uniform or your flag from that show, please get in touch because it might be the last one in existence, and I would absolutely love to preserve it in the museum.
How about you, Bill?
There is so many things that I've collected that I want it all. I want to find something for almost every chord that was out there, just to say you're remembered. To sit there and think about which show I want. I have a lot of them already. One of the rare ones that I have is called Chinese Cathay. It's a blue uniform embroidered with a bamboo hat and slippers that a friend of mine gave me about 15 years ago. But it was a Chinese core. And it's embroidered like you wouldn't believe how beautiful this looks. I'm trying to do Native American drum corps. There's a few that we know about. The African American drum corps community is underrepresented in what I have. I only have 3 uniforms out of 16,000, so I'm trying to find more of that type of uniform. The old girls are being more represented. I have 29 out of the 880. So my goal is to keep finding more of each category, making sure every category has something to represent that group of people.
And so where can we find you online? So obviously the website, which is
mpam.org. Yeah, you can type in Marching Pageantry Arts Museum. That'll get you there. Or mpam, mpam.org. Facebook page, same thing. DCX, you can find information about mpam. And then there's always my private Bill Ives Facebook page if you want to see what I get in every week. You know, I'm posting every week, literally just all the stuff that I got in this past week. If you're willing to like add to what we need to know, what happened when. Like I have all the WGI program books for most of them. We want to now make sure we fill in the blanks sooner than some of the stuff we're trying to do 100 years ago, which is a little harder. So yeah, there's still rare items out there, and if you want to pass them on to us, we will take care of your items and document your story, and your name lives on as a donator to the museum.
and you can go to the website for the address. You said there's a QR code there as well. If maybe you want to make a financial donation instead, I would say both are appreciated.
Come in person if you want to come to Upper Darby. If you're within 3 hours, where else are you going to go in the country to find a museum?
So I do have one little final question for you. So I know, Bill, you say you don't watch a whole lot of WGI, so you could maybe answer this with DCI if you were following this year. But I like asking all my guests what their favorite show of this past season was. So, Matt, you can do both if you want. But Bill, if you just want to maybe talk about your favorite DCI show you saw this year.
I did watch Boston from San Antonio, and I said they're going to win just from watching the event because I was doing a watch party, so I had a 65-inch TV, and so I kind of had a good view. I would say Boston was my favorite. Every core I heard was amazing. It's not like the 60s or the 70s. You had a range of talent. That's why I can't be that judge, as I mentioned earlier. I don't want to pick that. I mean, Blue Coats had a great show too. It just had you. I mean, Blue Devils, Crown. How do you pick a winner? I don't want to do it. I just want to be happy to have your costume, uniform, flag in the museum so we can show your kids when you get older and you have a job. And now you remember when you were 19, 20, 21 years old marching. So yeah, uh, Boston is my favorite.
How about you, Matt?
So, for DCI and please Boston Crusaders, because at Night Beat, we miss you. Please come back to North Carolina. I implore you next year. But Boston Crusaders was my absolute favorite. I mean, that show. I have a new phrase when it comes to designing like for soundtracks and designing for these activities that your show should go from A to Z with an idea. And Boston took the idea of a nuclear bomb and fusion and fission, and they went from A to Z with that idea. They did everything visually and musically you could think of with that idea. Fantastic. I loved it so much. In terms of WGI for this past season, that is hard. It is a hard pick because 2025 was a great year. I mean, I'm new to this, so maybe I'm not sure if I know 100% what I'm talking about, but my goodness, I mean, we look at, I mean, I love Wiley High School, the Cruella DeVille show. That was one of my favorites of the week. But also a show that's really is not getting a lot of talk about this year is what everyone I love the Woodlands, absolutely love them. But Carmel's show about Goodnight Moon with those moon props on second place, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. Love that show so much. That's one of my favorites. But I think overall, my favorite would have to be Paramount, Shout. That soundtrack and Vince Oliver, fantastic. I mean, that show was just, I mean, even from a soundtrack perspective, was just absolutely amazing and gorgeous. That redefined the song "Shout" from Tears for Fears. Absolutely loved it. So as you could tell, like big spectacle, because I mean, Paramount and Boston Crusaders were big, big, big shows. But yeah, those were probably my favorites this past season.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys being here, and we'll be posting the website and all extra information in the show notes for everybody to see. And I wish you all the best of luck with the museum project.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us on here, Eric.
And that'll do it for today. Once again, if you'd be interested in supporting the museum, all of their information is listed in the show notes for you. Make sure you give them a follow and look for their tents and booths at DCI and WGI events. I'll be back in 2 weeks with the listener Q&A episode, which I'm so excited about. So until then, stay safe, stay fabulous, and remember, at the end of the day, it's just flags in a gym.